Okay, so hello, Christine. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I am super, super grateful to you to have you on this show. To get started, could you just please share a little bit about yourself and what's happened in your life to bring you to this point where you are doing what you are doing now?
So, yeah, hi, I'm Christine, and my life has had some twists and turns. I started out, I did a Bachelor of Science a long, long time ago, and then I was working in forensic science, testing drugs and blood alcohol, working on the bench. I think I was terribly shy, didn't talk to anyone, but I had this desire to help people, and for some reason, I think I was shy, but I was always in trouble for talking too much. So on the bench, in the lab. So I wanted to help people. So I went into sales and I ended up getting into laboratory sales, and I was almost jettisoned straight in to become state sales manager. And then I went on to become national sales manager for a medical supply company. And then I had my second daughter and found out there was something wrong with her at 3 months of age. And it turns out that she has a muscle condition. She has epilepsy and so has seizures. So she's just turned 21 and she doesn't walk and talk. But it meant that I couldn't go back into my job. It was a job that I'd worked towards. I was at the pinnacle of my life, if you like. I was madly in love with my husband. We're literally renovating a house with a white picket fence in the inner city, Melbourne. And when we went to see the child and maternal house nurse that day, the bottom fell out of my world. But from there, I suffered from depression and things like that. And then picked myself up. Some people asked me to stand in the state election on disability issues, which I did. I was like, who does that? Who stands in state elections? And then, there was some hand wringing and, should we do this or not? And then something dramatic happened with my daughter. And then I went, that's it, I'm going to stand. So I stood in a state election. Then my now ex-husband left. And from there, some more people asked me to stand in a local government election, and I'd vowed and declared that standing in elections was hard, tiring, never going to do it again, but I did. Stood in the council election, got elected to council. But through the whole process, I had been, from the outset, when I found out there was something wrong with my daughter, found from the outset, I was applying for grants, set up a support group for carers for children with disabilities and a not-for-profit, and then, applied for grants, and I'd always been successful. And so then I got elected to council, and I got to see on council the decision-making process from the other side. So people were asking me, how did you do that? How did you make those things happen? And I looked back and mapped out the steps that I'd taken to make those things happen. And that's where I've come up with Grants Made Easy and helping people find the funds for the projects that they want to do. So that's where I'm today, helping people with finding money, finding grant applications and finding the resources for what they need.
Yeah, that's an amazing, amazing journey. One of the things that sort of astonishes me and really stands out is, how on earth did you find time to dedicate to these big undertakings like being elected for council or being in a state election? I imagine that there would be a lot of time that you would need to dedicate to these things, and just I'd be really interested to know, how your life changed from that point of finding out that your daughter had special needs, and how that sort of changed that transition phase of going from having one reality to then having a new reality where how did this change you, and how did this change your life, I suppose?
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a sliding doors moment, doesn't it? It is quite a sliding doors moment. So, uh, firstly, I guess I'll address how do I make things happen. So, it's a matter of when I was working in forensic science and I decided that I wanted to get into sales, that's what I decided to do. So, that was my project or my mission. And I talk about it in my book, actually, where back then I thought I was going for jobs, nobody would have me. So I decided that I would move into state because there I didn't have a background, I wasn't being put into this laboratory box. So I'd move into state. So I started applying for jobs into state. Well, back then there was no internet. So I got the local news agent to fly in the Courier Mail from Queensland. And on Mondays, I'd go through the jobs and then I'd apply for them from here. So I think from the outset, it was about making a decision that this is what I was going to do and then taking those steps. Ultimately, I didn't get a job from Melbourne. I ended up saving up money and moving up there. So again, it was a matter of deciding, and this is what I'm going to do, and then taking those steps. And it's the same when I stood in the state election. Oh, what does that look like? Who stands in elections? Oh, all these other people are doing it. And that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with. So one time when I looked around and I was spending time with political people, and I was thinking, well, how is it that I'm hanging around with these people and I happen to get elected? And it's like swimming in a school of fish. All the fish are going this way because I know that's where the food is. But if I was swimming in a different school, say I was swimming in a school that was, I don't know, lawyers, we'd all be sitting around on Saturday nights talking about law. Or if, I was a sports person, I used to play tennis. So we'd always be, you spent your spare time thinking about how you're going to get the next pair of Reeboks or whatever, the next tennis racket. So when I'm involved in politics, you're with these people and they're all talking about what the campaign's going to look like and how that's going to happen. So it's a matter of deciding where you want to go. It's a matter of deciding that that's it. So when it comes to where do you spend your time, so then I'm not spending my time doing other things. So that's what I do. And then when it comes to, I spent time, and I didn't have a lot of time, but I spent the spare time that I had and every bit of, support back then when I stood in the state election, going out, knocking on doors, letterbox dropping, doing those things. When it comes to the council election, I was asked really late in the piece, did what I could, whenever I could get care, I'd run out. And so those were things that I was doing. So, I don't know, when other people might be using their respite time to go out for dinner or something like that, that's where I was using my respite time. So that's where I ended up. So, but then something happened with council, and the other council said, well, it looks like, you're going to be elected to council. There was a countback. And I said, oh, Imogen's got to go to hospital. No big deal. She should be just there for a day. Turned out the hospital had sent me the wrong letter and she was having major surgery in ICU on life support every time when this countback was on. And it was like, now what? Isn't that just the way? So she's in hospital, she'd been on life support, come out. I got someone to sit with her where I went to the countback and I got elected. So then she came out of hospital and I had sort of extra support because she'd come out of hospital. And when I got elected, I was like, what am I going to do? And at the time, I just thought, this is a big compliment. People have asked me to sit on council for them. And so I'm going to take the opportunity and do whatever I can. It's difficult or whatever it is, difficult to make it, just do what I could to make it happen and just do whatever I could. So it turned out that council actually provided support for Imogen for me to be there.